My name is Rob Prewett and I'm a director at Prewett Bisley Architects. For the last 15-20 years we've spent an increasing amount of time working on existing buildings and looking to do low energy projects, so in retrofit really. The house we bought almost 9 years ago now is a classic 1960s standard local authority 2-storey terrace house. It's known as a cross-wall construction, so the party walls are the structural bit and the floors span between those. It's sort of simple shoebox really, with a flat roof on top and cavity wall construction, and by the time we bought it the windows have been upgraded already to sort of poor quality UPVC double glazing. So this house type is quite common. You find it in this area and throughout London and beyond actually. It's a simple shoebox with living space downstairs, bedrooms upstairs, fairly robust and fairly easy to sort of knock around and sort of move partitions because of the structural and the way it's composed. And it's a pretty standard family-sized house from that period, 1960s. So quite a simple layout, quite workaday, and quite easy to adapt and adjust actually. And I suppose, yeah, for us, that was quite important in finding something which would accept a degree of level of change so that we could adapt it to our needs. Aspects of the house that we wanted to improve. So a key one was improve daylight and ventilation. So the windows, front and rear, have been totally replaced and adjusted slightly, sometimes quite subtly, in other places a bit more robustly. And we also added in 2 roof lights to the flat roof, which allow daylight down into the space I'm in, along this wall, and also over the staircase on the other side of the house. And that made the sort of fairly deep plan of the house feel much more kind of evenly lit, and it makes life, I think, much more sort of agreeable generally. In terms of insulation, we designed in from day one a very small loft extension to add on another spare bedroom, because we were going to lose a bedroom on the first floor to combine sort of a small and a medium-sized bedroom into a larger one. So that loft extension created the opportunity to completely re-insulate the flat roof and make the whole building much more weathertight. The floor underneath my feet is a solid slab, so we've overlaid that with, I think, 3 inches of insulation plus a new finish on top. And as sort of a reaction to that, we were a bit worried about floor to ceiling height being made a little bit mean, so we've left some of the ceilings exposed, so the ceilings wouldn't come down anyway as part of the works. So we've left the joists exposed to give it a little bit more feeling of sort of roominess. And then the walls, most of the walls are cavity, so simple cavity wall insulation, sort of very cheap, very cost-effective measure. Though we were quite careful to make sure those cavities were nice and clean without any sort of moisture issues. So be quite careful about that sort of measure. And that's been augmented with some internal wall insulation in places to improve and enhance the general wall performance. So roof, floor and walls plus windows gives us this sort of complete insulation envelope. So that's great for energy efficiency, great for comfort, great for reduced carbon, as well as those low energy retrofit things. We were keen that we'd also enhance the kind of experience of the space, quality of daylight and sort of framing views from certain rooms to the spaces beyond, which are actually quite attractive, even though it's sort of a slightly unloved council estate. And also, especially on the ground floor, to give a feeling of more openness. So the rooms are quite sort of, I would say, almost meanly sized when we found it, but by losing a couple of walls here and there strategically, what's actually quite a small floor plate feels a little bit more expansive, a little bit more comfortable. A few key numbers on the house. So we're about 90 square metres. That's pretty much the average UK dwelling size, and there's 4 of us in here. And for me, that feels about right. There's enough space, but there's not an abundance of space either. And that sort of, living reasonably leanly for me is part of kind of low energy and sustainability, not having excess space. In terms of the heat demand, the energy efficiency measures we've done have taken the house from about sort of 150 kilowatt hours per square metre down to about 8, so that's sort of like a 90% reduction or more. And the transformation that delivers in terms of comfort is kind of quite palpable. And the last winter actually, we switched off the wet central heating altogether, and I fitted the kitchen with the dining space actually, with one simple electric radiator, which I metered, and that heated the whole house pretty evenly, remarkably evenly actually, comfortably for 800 kilowatt hours, which is only a few times more than my fridge uses annually. So it's a kind of tiny amount of energy now for heating. It's almost trivial. So that's quite sort of satisfying. But I think for me the comfort is kind of the real reward. I believe in terms of kind of retrofit generally for the masses, everybody else, sort of ordinary folk. It's all achievable. There are measures everybody can adopt. The technology exists, the trades exist, and the products are out there now. So whether it's improving the loft, really filling and getting as much insulation as possible, or upgrading windows or doing wall insulation, that can all be done. And this project, quite a lot of it's been done by ourselves, sort of our own sort of sweat labour. So there are some DIY aspects that you can take. You do need to be quite careful about kind of thinking about the whole house plan and the measures you're going to do, and possibly how you're going to do those over time, and think about ventilation too. So part of all good projects, part of this project was about getting adequate ventilation so we get really good air quality. So these things are realisable. In terms of costs, that's still always going to be probably more than we'd like. These are sort of investments which I think ultimately do pay for themselves, but in the meantime the extra health and comfort benefits, and also enhancements to the value of your house as an asset too, I think increasingly makes sense. So it's almost no-brainer, but it's not an easy thing. It needs quite a lot of planning, and it does need to plan the capital investment too for most people. Certainly we had to plan that quite carefully to get to a point where it feels like quite a privilege to live here, because it's just such a comfortable, pleasant place to spend time with one's family.